I'd like to share with you some ideas on basic principles of appropriate technology from my book called I Am, A Journey Through Times and Spaces. This is a principal part of my book, and because in dealing with basic community needs in the San Luis Valley of Colorado and in Latin America and Africa and India, I have found certain principles that are universal, which we're quite familiar with, many of these, but these really help me to help these people become more energy self-reliant and to free them up from the dependency on fossil fuels, expertise, expensive expertise, corporations and appliances and that sort of thing. We found out, of course, that hot air rises and is able to pull air through a home, for example, to actually cool a home with a hot metal roof, or understanding that hot air rises can pull air into an evaporative refrigerator that has evaporative mats on the side to cool medicines and to cool food. We know that cool air drops, and with that understanding, we were able to cool down tons and tons of earth underneath the floor of a building in India by allowing the cool air dropping through evaporative windows to go under the floor through ceramic pipe and then be drawn up and out of the building with the hot metal roof. Cool air replaces hot air rising. We know that black absorbs the sun's heat, and therefore we're able to paint metal black and make solar collectors for heating our homes, or to make solar ovens black inside, or simply using black pots and pans inside a reflective oven, for example. A black surface is good for radiating heat. And to the sun, a black surface not only absorbs heat, but will radiate heat quite well also. That's why the backside of an absorber plate inside a solar collector radiates heat into the airspace, and we can pull air through there and blow it into a home or under a crawl space. We've done this with a lot of single wide trailer homes so that the entire floor of the home becomes a radiant heat surface by heating up the crawl space. We know that white reflects the sun, and by painting hot metal roofs white, we've been able to make the home much more comfortable. Instead of 140 degrees in some parts of Argentina, for example, where we first experimented with this, the house would cool down to 90-something. And then the white surface, we found out, is poor at radiating heat at night to the night sky, which is a minus 300 degree temperature, like sucking the heat from metal roofs and creating a swing of temperatures from 140 during the day down to 60 at night, which is extremely terrible for one's health. That's why people don't even live inside their microondas, as they call them, microwave homes. So by painting the roof white, not only do they keep the day's sun out, but they cut down on the radiant heat loss to the night sky. So these basic principles, just once they're understood and applied, can resolve so many of the problems encountered throughout the two-thirds world. Dead air is an insulator. That's why a sweater works so well, because the threads of the sweater, the fibers, create a bunch of dead air spaces, which help keep the heat into your body, because dead air doesn't transmit or transfer heat very well. Plastic or glass traps heat energy, As we know, the shortwave radiation from the sun goes right through plastic or glass, but once it hits something like your garden inside a greenhouse, or hits that cob wall on the north side of a greenhouse, then that becomes heat energy and it's trapped. It doesn't go through the plastic or glass that way. That's the greenhouse effect. Clear plastic or glass allows the sun's energy to pass through. UV rays kill bacteria and even transparent giardia cysts. So by putting water into a plastic bottle, or better yet would be glass, for a couple of hours, all the bacteria is killed, and even the giardia cysts, because the cells are transparent. And clear water allows UV rays to penetrate the water better. So let me move on to the next page where we can see a little bit more here about the basic principles of appropriate technology. With these basic principles, we could understand how a stovepipe could draw enough air to start a fire, even as if one were blowing on it. Now we could understand why, once the stovepipe was hot, even a small opening left by a damper would be enough for all the smoke to be removed from the firebox while keeping heat directed to cooking vessels, and saving, by the way, 2/3 of the cooking fuel, just by putting a damper in, just by slowing down that heat loss, that hot air rising. Since stovepipes had been introduced to kitchens, which were once thatched, the lack of smoke filtering out through the roofs meant that the creosote and other resins were not acting to preserve the integrity of the thatched roofs. No longer were they impermeable to rain and unpleasant to insects. The thatched roofs failed by the millions with the attack of insects, and the dreaded insect that causes chaga disease spread wildly, bringing misery to millions, finding a perfect home in the thatch, which was falling apart. The answer from the wisdom of the colonizing empire was to replace these thatched roofs with tin roofs. And yet what we have discovered in our work is that we can preserve the thatched roof, which is a beautiful, appropriate technology that can be built in a community and maintained by the community, simply by allowing the smoke to go through the thatch before it leaves the home, and still have a chimney from the cooking area, from the kitchen, up into, say, an attic that will allow the smoke to go through thatch, and that way preserve it. Throughout the world, the tin roof has made make houses uninhabitable during the heat of the day, as in Latin America. The house with a tin roof is known as a microonda, or microwave. Perhaps technology can find a way to remove smoke from the kitchen area, but allow it to pass through the thatch to eliminate the devastating effects of an improved or imposed expensive technology. This is thinking outside the microonda oven. In one of our videos in our community-based appropriate technology series in the YouTube channel with the same name, it deals with how to do this very simply. With our basic principles understood, an amazing transformation is experienced in the interior of a home when the home's tin roof is whitewashed or painted white. Not only is it cooler during the day, during the heat of the sun, but at night, the poor radiating characteristics of the white paint means it maintains the home's temperature at night, thus moderating temperatures so that you don't have that swing from 140 degrees inside to 60 at night because of the nighttime radiation loss to the minus 300 degree night sky. If interested in any of these devices and appropriate technology solutions, feel free to contact me. My address is, my email address is heartmindalliance@gmail.com, and you can see some of the work that we've done at www.solutions.info. Let's go here to the next page in my book. If these ideas that you have that you'd like to share, if they work, if they're being used and is affordable to the poor, I'm interested. It will be added to the solutions.info website. Remember, it's solutions with a hyphen for the focus on the sun. This is something new under the sun. So I want to share with you some of the experience that I've had with different appropriate technologies, all based upon these basic principles. And so here, without going into a lot of depth explanation of each technology, are the ones with which I've had some experience and highly recommend, as they can be built with little investment or with none at all. Insulated solar greenhouses with vertical glazing that don't overheat in the summer. Greenhouse plastic glazing with 15 years lifespan simply by putting chicken wire under the plastic. By the way, the solar greenhouses will produce food all winter long. Low-cost earthquake-proof housing using wire for the walls, with stuccoed with adobe, mesh and infill, cob walls which are earthquake-proof. All of these technologies are featured in the community-based appropriate technology series being archived at Northern New Mexico College and available through that platform. Trench cold frames, solar heated stock tanks, simple vertical wind rotors, solar heated lambing pens, chicken coops, livestock shelters, solar heated batch water tanks. So much. Let's see what else we have here on the next page. We have hot metal roofs for heating or cooling a home, subfloor cooling and or heating using adobe, no-cost thermal storage walls, biogas digesters, solar water heating systems, so that in the winter, instead of adding cold water to the biogas digesters with a manure mix or whatever, you can have solar water that's heated in 55-gallon drums. Very little cost to keep your biogas digester working really well. And actually, we've had some reports that biogas digesters have worked better in the winter when that warm water is introduced to the digestion system. Heating with compost. Greenhouses can be completely heated with compost because composting generates heat. Solar cooking. We've got very simple solar cookers that use black utensils, and so all they need is just reflective foil around the utensils instead of any kind of insulation. 10,000-gallon ferro cement water tanks, and I've built several for under $200 using the wavy chicken wire machine, which is triangulating chicken wire is a technology that is possible at the community level. and so they're able to use much less cement to make ferrous cement water tanks to capture rainwater, which is becoming so critical as glaciers disappear. Now, remember that as the earth warms, the air is able to hold water in suspension much better, and so the water's still there and comes down as rain and hail. The Amazon, for example, is drying up, but as the prevailing winds move that moisture to the Andes, there are huge, horrible storms. One storm in La Paz of hail killed 30 people because all the sewage drain pipes, not the sewage, but the rainwater drains filled up with ice, and the water coming down through La Paz carried buses and taxis and vehicles, and people were killed. They had never seen hail before. And that video of that devastation being caused by the increase of water in suspension in the air is available on YouTube. I think the year was 2003 when the hailstorm hit La Paz, and it's happened in Cochabamba. When I was there, there were 6 people killed. It happened in Puno, Peru. So catching that water that's coming down is becoming very critical, and the fact that we can build these ferrous cement water tanks for under $200 is just revolutionary, thanks to the invention of Ron Davis's of a machine that can corrugate the wire. That corrugation of wire can be done manually, of course, but the machine makes it quite easy. So we've learned about solar water purification because of the basic principle of UV light killing bacteria. We've learned that we can solar refrigerate by using evaporative coolers for evaporative cooling of medicines and food. We now know how to build a latrine that doesn't pollute the water table, called the movable shallow pit latrine. The rope water pump is just this beautiful technology developed during the CIA wars in Nicaragua. When they didn't have electricity to pump water, they developed a way to pull water out of wells using rope. All of these technologies are in videos, over 100 videos that we now have at the community-based appropriate technology website. Improved wood stoves have cut back on the use of wood by 2/3, and are no-cost improvements, basically invented by Benjamin Franklin, of putting a damper in between the firebox and the chimney. And here we also have learned how to build no-cost chimneys, and we want to stress the incredible power of aluminized plastic to reflect radiant heat. 97% of all radiant heat is reflected by one sheet of aluminum or even aluminum foil from the kitchen. White roofs for cooling and for heat retention. We've already talked a bit about that. Black roofs, solar systems for heating and cooling. So these technologies translated, for example, in the kitchen, with the saving of fuel by simply having dampers that can be shut down to keep the heat in, but still allow smoke out of the kitchen. And I'm going to finish this little video by showing you a picture of one of my favorite stoves that we built in El Salvador that actually demonstrates some of these principles of appropriate technology. The comal, which is where tortillas are placed, heat tortillas by radiant energy. The wood inside there is now closed with a damper, meaning that we're keeping the oxygen from the wood as it burns and only burning the gases, not the carbon. And so what is left over in here and in here is a wonderful amendment to the soil in your garden. It is absolutely wonderful carbon, so that this entire development of putting dampers into stoves for no money at all, there's another one back there, means that we are able to burn wood without the heavy carbon footprint of cooking. We're burning the gases out of the firewood, but not the actual wood itself. The carbon is then available for applying to the garden, and this is in fact how the Amazon began. The charcoal from fires and mixed with compost from the kitchens created an appropriate soil mix to be able to begin growing fruit trees. And after the die-off of millions of people due to disease throughout Latin America, up to 300 million people lost their lives due to diseases that were introduced from Europe and China, the Amazon took off, creating its own perimeter soil as it grew until it became the Amazon as we know it today. But it all started with teja preta, with the black earth from the charcoal mixed with compost, food scraps, human waste, animal wastes in the communities, which in some areas are being discovered to be over a meter deep, the teja preta. And this is what the biochar technology that's being introduced to Northern New Mexico College is all about. Learn more about that from through the renewable energy course that's being offered at Northern New Mexico College. There's a movable horizontal damper at the opening of the firebox, and here's one that's lifted up vertically. This damper, made out of flattening out corrugated metal roofing, moves horizontally, as does the one back on that side. Here we're keeping the heat in, not allowing any flames around the pot. That pot was pressed down into the mud as it was drying. This entire stove is made out of mud. It's dirt cheap. But one beautiful thing about it is that